They call it the land down under. It is a vast continent with rich wildlife. It is a young nation in an ancient land. It is a land of contrast. It is home to more than 16 million people. The land is called Australia. In 1606, the Dutch explorer William Jansz was the first European to discover Australia. In 1770, the English explorer James Cook landed in Botany Bay, south of what is now the city of Sydney. He claimed the east coast for England, naming it South Wales. This early exploration eventually led to colonization by the Europeans. This early colony, however, was quite unique, being composed almost entirely of convicts. The convicts were sent to Australia to relieve the overcrowded British prisons. A prison camp was set up on the shores of Sydney Harbour. The influx of prisoners continued until 1868. When it ended, more than 160,000 prisoners lived on the continent. Poor immigrants also traveled to Australia in the hope of improving their lives. Many of their hopes were fulfilled when gold was discovered on the continent in 1851. The colony was suddenly rich. And the gold rush was on. People from all over the world came to Australia to hunt for gold. These fortune seekers were called prospectors. In many ways, Australia's gold rush paralleled the gold rush of 1849 in the United States. In 1848, gold was found in California. News traveled fast, and by 1849, the American West experienced a population explosion. Towns sprang up. The population jumped from 5,000 to 85,000 in a matter of a few years. During its gold rush, Australia experienced a similar population explosion. The population rose from approximately 400,000 in 1850 to over 1 million by 1860. The tremendous increase was a direct result of the gold rush. These colonists and prospectors found a land quite unlike any they had known before. The land was flat and vast and stretched into the horizon as far as the eye could see. Climate was one of extremes, hot and arid in the deserts, colder in the mountain regions. There was also the Aborigines. The Aborigines were native Australians who lived on the continent for more than 40,000 years. Their lifestyle and culture were severely disrupted by the coming of the Europeans. Many Aboriginal languages and traditions succumbed to European colonization. Children were taught European ways. Land was taken, often without compensation. As a result of colonization, the Aborigine population fell from approximately 300,000 in 1770 to only 60,000 by 1900. Today, the Aborigine population makes up about 1% of the present population. Some of their traditions and culture live on. Indeed, in our multicultural society, they are re-emerging. In many ways, the Aboriginal population of Australia parallels the Native Americans of the United States. Like Australia's Aborigines, Many of the Native Americans' traditions died out with the coming of the white settlers. Today, Native American traditions are also experiencing a reemergence in our multicultural society. As the gold rush slowed, immigration also leveled off. By 1880, there were approximately 2 million people on the continent. Following World War II, the Australian government offered to pay part of the passage of Europeans to encourage immigration. This incentive ended in 1965. Today, there are more than 16 million people who live on the continent. People from more than 120 countries have made their home in the land down under. The majority of the population is of Anglo-Irish background. English is the official language. The main religions are Protestant and Roman Catholic. Australia today is a federation of 6 states and 2 mainland territories. It is as big as the United States without Alaska. In 1901, Australia became an independent commonwealth. The capital of Australia is Canberra. Like Washington, D.C., Canberra was built expressly as the capital of the country. Also like Washington, it is the site of Australia's government. Canberra was designed in 1911 by the American town planner, Walter Griffin. As in the case of Washington, D.C., Canberra is also the diplomatic center of the country, with more than 60 nations represented. There are 2 chambers, or houses, to the federal parliament. The House of Representatives is modeled on the British House of Commons. The other chamber is the Senate. The Senate is the state's House of Review, which is modeled on the American Senate. A Prime Minister is the head of the country, a position similar to Britain's Prime Minister and the President of the United States. Australia's constitution was very much influenced by the Constitution of the United States. The new Parliament House opened on May 9, 1988, and attracted international interest in its architectural design. Australia pursues an independent foreign policy. It is a strong supporter of the Western Alliance and the United Nations. It is committed to international law and disarmament. Australia is one of the world's most urbanized countries, with about 70% of the population living in the 10 largest cities. Many people also own their own homes and live in suburbs. The majority of the labor force is wage and salary earners. An increasing number of women have joined the labor force. As in other countries, laws have been adopted to prevent discrimination in the workplace. Australia was a pioneer in industrial relations and arbitration. It was one of the first countries to have an organized legal system for solving industrial disputes.
As to to have proper regard for the responsibilities of leading hands.
Education is compulsory up to the age of 15 or 16, depending on the state. Parents have the choice of sending their children to state-run or private schools. Federal and state governments finance school programs to increase understanding of the many different cultural backgrounds of the Australian population. Indeed, Australia is a rich, multicultural nation.
What do you think my name is? I wonder if you know. My name is Keeley. Hello, hello, hello. Terrific.
While the vast majority of the population live in the cities and suburbs, a small portion resides in the remote areas of the continent known as the outback. The outback is Australia's interior, where the land is flat and dry. It is only good for raising sheep or cattle. The children in these remote areas are educated by the School of the Air. The School of the Air is a system of instruction using two-way radios.
My name's CJ. Good morning, all the girls and boys and teachers. Over.
Are you all wearing smiles today? Over.
Australia has 21 universities and more than 40 colleges of advanced education. About 28,000 foreign students study in Australia. Health care is available to everyone under a national tax-funded health system. The federal government supports medical research. As this government-sponsored commercial shows, people are encouraged to prevent medical problems by healthy living.
Try it today. Here's a simple walk to start with. Stand up, walk over here, and turn off the telly. And then go for a walk outside. Go on. We'll still be here when you get back.
Australia's principal industry is manufacturing. Exports are vital to its economy. Its main exports are paper, plastics, and transportation equipment. Rural exports make up about 35% of the country's total exports and include wool, beef, sugar, wheat, citrus fruit, and rice. Reserves of coal, natural gas, and uranium make Australia a leading energy exporter. Australia is also one of the largest producers and exporters of iron ore. Gold, silver, and precious stones are also mined. Australia is also the world's foremost supplier of pink diamonds. Australia is a modern country which has long been a member and proponent of high-tech research and resources. Its use of high-tech equipment has not only revolutionized the medical and manufacturing fields, but agricultural and mining operations as well. 2 Australian scientists are numbered among the Nobel Prize winners. The Walter and Eliza Hall Institute of Medical Research in the city of Melbourne is recognized as a world leader in immunological and cancer research. It is also recognized as a leader in the development of the bionic ear for the profoundly deaf children. Another principal industry is tourism. Approximately 2 million tourists visit the country each year. In many ways, these tourists, like the early colonists to Australia, find a unique land, one which they have never known before, a land rich in contrasts and cultural diversity. There are vast deserts and long, expansive beaches, both undeveloped and developed. Behind the cities, the Australian bushland stretches into the horizon. Here are many of the 2,000 national parks, reserves, and conservation areas. It is here where we find the diverse Australian wildlife. There's the wombat, the platypus, the kangaroo, of course, and the koala bear, and many others. Of all the continents, Australia boasts the most unusual assortment of plants and animals. Meanwhile, a short distance from the bushlands are the cities and city living. There is a great variety of things to do in Australian cities. The government heavily supports the performing arts.
Dommage que vous ne puissiez pas venir à un concert plutôt que d'être venu.
Hot summers and sandy beaches make swimming the nation's favorite recreational pastime. There are, of course, many others. Including baseball. One of the few homegrown games is Australian football, a mixture of Gaelic football and rugby.
Over the shoulder, what a goal! Dean to the front to McClure. Hunter at full forward with Mew. Glasgow, open goal. At last, Carlton get their second.
Australia, the island continent. A land of contrasts. A young nation in an ancient land. A nation rich in culture and tradition. Australia is a growing multicultural society in our ever-expanding multicultural world.